Since we're speaking of you being unfairly kind of interacted with and disrespected, and again, it is so funny because the combination of, was it you who said this or Mark who just said that? That combination of kind of ignorance and arrogance is just infuriating to behold. But we do have this clip of you speaking at this, what was it called? The debate series. What was it?
The Dissident Dialogues.
Dialogues, yeah. And I just wanted to play this one clip where you are talking and being spoken over, and then you elicit a very loud response from one of your one of your opponents in this debate. The debate was whether or not the war on Gaza was just, right? That was the topic of debate, and you were taking the hot take position of no, it's not. And the people on the other side was Michael Moynihan and Eli Lake. So this is you being asked about what the response of October 7th should be. You had obviously brought up the right to return as something that Israel needs, that needs to be implemented for there to be peace. Let's just show this clip.
One state solution, which means that there cannot, when Hamas is talking about eliminating Israel, it's talking about not killing all of the Jews. It's about eliminating the idea.
Okay.
It's about
leave it there. We'll leave it there. We'll leave it there.
It's about. Let me just finish, sir. Can I just finish the sentence? It's about eliminating the idea of a Jewish state, ending a Jewish state, ending an ethno-national state, and having a state more like what we have in the United States of America.
If I can just.
Okay. I mean, that is. Sorry, I should have given you a trigger warning for that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, the entire debate was like that. Like the moderator there, in case people are blessedly offline, is the man who coined the term DEI Barbie, who you might have questions about his ability to fairly moderate a debate now in retrospect.
And you really gave the game away.
Before, it's like before it was anywhere close to the end of like responding to the question, he wanted to like cut me off because Eli started laughing. You know, what's interesting, what's going around right now is Mehdi Hassan being in a similar sort of a format, doing a really great job, losing the debate on the basis of the votes they take before and after, but having to respond to a crowd and to, antagonists in the debate who are similarly disrespectful and who heckle and jeer at like the evocation of like basic humanitarian principles. Like don't kill kids, like boo, like that was the kind of environment which maybe I should have expected, but I was frankly and maybe naively surprised that people outside of their computer screen and the anonymity that the internet gives you are willing to just be like, hi, look at me, I'm a human being with a social security card who's easily identifiable, and I'm willing to stand here in front of you and say we should be able to kill every kid necessary to protect Israel, right? Like to protect Israel as a Jewish ethno-state specifically. And so it was like very odd. It was like a very like destabilizing experience. But in terms of like that clip, that clip was clipped by a person on the internet who also clipped the eye roll thing and has been trying to get me fired for a while, who was previously a guest on Rising, who they tried to have back actually after that as a guest. And I was like, are you guys serious? This person like has been terrorizing me for a week. Like on what planet does this person merit a return appearance? Not to mention the main reason they don't merit a return appearance is because they are not a person who would, I think, qualify. They're not a professor. They're not a journalist. They're not a historian. They're not a politician. They're not an elected official. I mean, it's just like a random Zionist off the internet who wants to fight and antagonize me. And the Hill seems very willing to do so when they want to. So he had clipped that in the first campaign to get me fired about a week before the one that was ultimately successful. And I think much like Mark, I'm like, and by the way, it was recirculated by what's his name from the Bronx, who has the poorest district, highest child poverty rate in America, but spends his whole time talking about Israel. Yeah, Richie Torres, that's the one, FYI, who has the highest child poverty rate in the entire country. It's not in Mississippi. It's not where you might expect. It's in New York State, in New York City, and the Bronx. Richie Torres' district. Anyway, he tweeted it out, made it go viral, but initially was clipped by this person I'm not mentioning. And when I look back at this clip, similarly to the eye roll clip, it's like, what's your objection? That Hamas revised its charter, so it no longer is anti-Semitic. I mean, like you can question the legitimacy of it, like the how much people are actually committed to that, but you can't argue that the charter, in fact, was changed, and that when people colloquially are talking about the end of Israel, they're talking about the end of Israel as an ethno-state that has been oppressing Palestinians for 76 years now. And that was supposed to be the damning evidence that was supposed to get me fired the first time around. And honestly, if the order had been reversed and the eye roll interview happened first and then the due dissidence clip happened second, we could be very well sitting here having a conversation about how my anti-Semitic comments at a dissident dialogues debate ultimately made the Hill had to sever ties with me, because it was all a pretext.
Yeah, I mean, what I thought was amazing about that clip is that, to me, that's almost like an anti-Zionist clip, because it shows someone laughing in a diabolical, bullying way when confronted with facts. I mean, to me, it was just such an I couldn't believe that they were sending that around as an attack on you. To me, it just made Eli Lake look unhinged and like a comic book villain who couldn't actually defend his own ideas and had to laugh over you because you were actually making a good point that nobody wants to look at and acknowledge. And of course, Hamas does distinguish between Jews and Zionists. They say that in their revised charter. I mean, they go out of their way to make it clear that this is not about the Jewish people or the Jewish religion. This is about occupiers.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what's been so interesting, I mean, Mark was talking about how he, is an academic and has studied Palestine and visited Palestine. And I was listening to him and thinking, well, I have certainly not done any of that. And I
anthropological research.
I can much more credibly be accused of not knowing much about what I'm talking about. And that's completely fair. I think many people have felt like I got a bone up post October 7th because we're all suddenly thrown into the grist of feeling kind of instinctively, and later validated by the UN and various humanitarian organizations, that Israel's response to October 7th was wildly disproportionate and in fact was in violation of international law. But, that was work. Everything that I know now is, the product of basically recent study. But despite that fact, what I found to be really interesting is how many people who hold themselves out as kind of experts for the pro-Zionist side are very bad at it, are not very informed or bright or nimble. And some of it, I think, is the nature of bot armies. Like, bots are always stupid. So like some percentage of the comments that you're seeing are like not real people. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt. But someone like Eli Lake has been talking about this issue for years. And, that clip went viral, was made viral. But one of the moments that I thought was much more galling was the day before, the Thursday before this Friday conference, I had just reported on the Hill as a news segment, not as editorial, the threat that Netanyahu had made as we were looking down the perspective, the barrel of the perspective of the ICC warrants being issued prospectively that hadn't been issued yet. And Netanyahu threatened that he was going to attack the West Bank if the warrants were issued. Specifically, remember the story, because he didn't say I'm going to retaliate against Hamas or whatever. It was, I'm going to attack the West Bank. And the article talked about maybe there would be kind of economic sanctions, withholding taxes that have been collected, things like that. And when I alluded to this, I just brought it up. It wasn't like a main part of my point, but when I alluded to it in the course of the debate, Eli Lake again was like, that's crazy. You're saying that, Netanyahu's saying I'm just going to do more war crimes in the West Bank. That's crazy and made up. I'm like, well, no, it's literally the report from yesterday. I can pull it up. It was in Axios. I have a bit of a photographic memory for the font of the news when I read it. So I remembered it was an Axios article. And if the moderator were interested in getting to the bottom of anything, I just said, okay, wait, what are you referring to? Let's pull the story up. Let's get to the bottom of it. And then Eli respond to what it means for Netanyahu and what you described as the world's greatest democracy, or the only democracy in the Middle East, to be publicly threatening uninvolved parties with both physical violence, because they also shot up a bunch of people after that, physical violence and economic violence, for the UN court basically doing its job and holding you accountable for war crimes. Like, how do you parse that? Eli Lake. But he was able to get away with like pretending that I was the stupid one for talking about a news story that I knew confidently that I had just reported on less than, fewer than 24 hours in advance. And that's what they've been getting away with. Just like cackling and bullying and using letter writing campaigns and getting people canceled because their arguments are so thin and unsubstantiated.